Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Pam Greenwalt, SAG-AFTRA's Chief Communications and Marketing Officer. I want to say a few words about structure, timing, signal quality, and some other things before we get rolling. We are going to have statements by our principals, who I'll be introducing in just a moment, followed by a Q&A session. You can indicate your interest in asking a question by raising your hand in Zoom, and we'll call on you each in the order that your questions come in. If you're having trouble with the signal, either video or audio through the Zoom, please let us know at news@sagaftra.org, and we'll do what we can to help you from this end. Finally, I want to let you know that a transcript of this conversation and video will be uploaded to our website in a few hours. Today, you'll be hearing from Sarah Elmale, actor and chair of the SAG-AFTRA Interactive Media Negotiating Committee. You can reference our press release for the correct spelling of Sarah's name, and I'm going to give you a short bio information. You can also follow up at news@sagaftra.org if you'd like this sent to you by email. Sarah is an actor and voice director with a passion for collaborative creation. She's best known for roles in AAA games like Hi-Fi Rush, Halo Infinite, and Gears 5, and for indies like After Party Pyre and Gone Home. Sarah also has directing credits spanning production scope from Goodbye Volcano High to Fortnite. We're also joined, this is Sarah in the center. We're also joined by committee member Zeke Alton. Zeke is a voice, on-camera, and performance capture actor. He's a member of the negotiating committee for interactive, but also for TV film. Zeke's a Navy veteran of 20-plus years and a former military test pilot whose video game credits include the Callisto Protocol, Call of Duty, and Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. Andy Norris, to my left, is an actor, creature performer, and stunt performer who works extensively in performance capture. Past credits include The Immortals of Avium, Star Wars Vader Immortal, Stranger Things VR, and Predator Hunting Grounds. I also want to introduce to you SAG-AFTRA's Chief Contracts Officer, Ray Rodriguez, who's joining us by Zoom. Ray is the lead negotiator for SAG-AFTRA on this contract. Again, welcome, and now here's Sarah Elmale.
Hello, esteemed members of the press and my amazing fellow game performers. I'm Sarah Elmale, chair of the SAG-AFTRA Interactive Negotiating Committee. And as we've just announced, we are now on strike for video games. Our efforts to avoid this outcome and negotiate a fair deal have been inarguably collaborative and diligent. Many months of bargaining yielded tentative agreements on a range of proposals, and your overwhelming strike authorization vote of 98.32% in September brought the pressure needed to achieve a significant wage increase and safety provisions for our on-camera performers, as well as partial but dangerously incomplete AI provisions. Our AI proposals will provide comprehensive performer protection. The technology is complex, but regardless of the generative AI system in use, if your performance is being replicated, you deserve access to essential information, you deserve to give or not give your consent, and you need to be paid properly. Period. This is fair, this is feasible, and anything less is exploitation. Unfortunately, exploitation is exactly what the bargaining group would have us accept for ourselves. The employers refuse to plainly affirm in clear and enforceable language that they will protect all performers covered by this contract in their AI language. They insist we overlook obvious AI loopholes that imperil both movement and voice performance, which are, in today's games, frequently combined. Their offer is quite literally unacceptable. But we know that there are employers who are prepared to collaborate with us from a baseline of respect, and we stand ready to bargain in good faith with those partners. The tiered budget agreement, specifically aimed at smaller budget developers, incorporates our fair and reasonable proposals, including all of our AI provisions. We've already signed games, even at the lowest budget levels, proof that what we are asking for is not only just, but financially feasible. This agreement, as well as the interim interactive media agreement, are available right now, and games signed to those agreements will not be interrupted. Actors get to continue working with the protections they need, and everyone wins. This strike is the next phase of pressure. To the bargaining group, we are done waiting. This strike is about actors and employers building a paradigm of safe collaboration together through safe contracts, contracts with crucial safety protections, wage increases, and AI protections starting now.
Thank you, Sarah. Now, Ray Rodriguez.
Thank you, Pam. Every one of our members working under a SAG-AFTRA contract is delivering a performance, and that performance deserves to be protected. No one should be subjected to their performance, their voice, their likeness, or any aspect of the work they do being used to replace them without their informed consent and compensation. We have not yet been able to achieve that in bargaining, and until we do, effective 12:01 a.m., July 26th, so just after midnight tonight, we will be on strike.
Thank you, Ray. Zeke?
In every performance space that SAG-AFTRA covers with respect to artificial intelligence, it's vital that we bargain consent, compensation, and transparency in two areas. Those two areas are digital replicas and generative AI systems to create what we call synthetic performers. Now, a digital replica is when you use my recorded performance to create a model that can then independently create new performance as me without me being there. Now, while we've engaged in productive talks around consent and compensation on digital replicas of voices, as Sarah said, what's on the table is dangerously incomplete. We have given them the clear and understandable language that represents the base level of protections we need to even exist as a profession. And their response has been delayed, vague, and riddled with so many legal loopholes that we're left with practically no protection for our future. It's gross. Now, emerging generative AI systems, which, by the way, are unfairly trained on basically everyone's copyrighted works, will someday have the capability to create a synthetic character that looks, walks, and talks just like me simply by typing in a prompt. Now, to accept their provision around these new tools would be to blindly accept an obvious means of evading the digital replication protections that we've already bargained in the agreement already. Now, our AI proposals, they contain vital protections that complement what was achieved in prior negotiations, and without them, even those agreements are vulnerable. They also complement legislative efforts to protect performers, to set the precedent to protect the rights of other game workers in our industry and workers in every industry.
Thank you, Zeke. Andy?
As Sarah and Zeke and Ray all mentioned, the employer's AI provisions leave the folks who put their bodies on the line the most vulnerable to abuse. They say they get to choose, seemingly arbitrarily, who is a performer and who is just data. Our union represents all performers, and we refuse to allow our employers to disrespect a portion of our members who have poured their lives and talents into making great performances by saying we don't count. Performers are hired to bring their unique skills and qualities to game characters and to give realistic human weight to the impact of the world around them. The performers who bring their body of work to these games create a whole variety of characters, and all of that work must be covered. Their proposal would carve out anything that doesn't look and sound identical to me as I sit here, when in truth, on any given week, I am a zombie. I am a soldier. I am a zombie soldier. We cannot and will not accept that a stunt or movement performer giving a full performance on stage next to a voice actor isn't a performer. It would be like shooting all of second unit on a film without union protections simply because it's action. This bargaining group's AI provisions do not clearly and unambiguously acknowledge and protect movement as performance. They would leave movement specialists, including stunts, entirely out in the cold to be replaced without so much as notice by soulless synthetic performers trained on our actual performances. And just like our voice actor friends risk their vocal cords doing death cries for hours at a time, movement performers like me risk the rest of their necks doing falls, fights, wire work, more. We are experts in our craft. Performers who have years of training and the talent to embody the movement styles of everything from martial arts to fantastical creatures and to perform complex and dangerous stunts while remaining in character. We deserve the rights to our own likeness. All performers do. And while we are willing to fight and fall, we aren't willing to roll over.
Thank you, Andy. And Sarah, you have some closing words?
Again, we already know there are employers out there who believe that business and fairness are not only a compatible but a prosperous combination. And game performers are going to bring the same fearless passion, commitment, and adaptability to ensuring the future of this wonderful craft as they do to bringing games characters to life. There will be plenty of ways for journalists, streamers, fans, and anyone who cares about games and the overall fairness of this industry to support the cause and share our message. Read our strike rules. Read our FAQs, pay attention when our union shares information, when we share information. Members plug into our buddy system. If you're at Comic-Con this weekend, have fun. It's exempt from our strike rules. We'll be there too. Come find us. Stay connected to each other and stay strong. Game performers, I love you. I love what you do, and I believe in you. You now have the tools and the choice to protect yourselves. The more we work without the protections we need, the greater the chance we lose them and we will not get them back. The more we work with the protections we need, the better the chance we get to keep them forever.
Thank you, Sarah, Ray, Zeke, and Andy. All right, we're going to open it up to questions now. Please raise your hands. And while you all are doing that, I want to give you the link to download our social media kit and all other information, including the press release from the website. You can go to sagaftra.org/videogames and video game strike. And there's a wealth of information to let you know all of the particulars. I also want to remind, Ray said this very clearly, but just for your information, the strike has been called. It is effective at 12:01 a.m. on the 26th, which is just after midnight tonight. With that, let's go to questions. Shannon Lau.
Hey there. Thanks so much. I'm wondering, I'm a gaming editor at Inverse. Wondering, you said that there was a 98% vote for yes in September last year. Why did you decide to strike now versus last year? What was the reason for the delay? And also, I'm wondering what's the impact on video games, upcoming video games, the strike could have.
Ray, do you want to take that?
Sure, I can certainly start. Listen, we wanted to give every opportunity for this issue to get resolved amicably through negotiations. That's always the union's first choice and greatest desire. We strike as a matter of last resort. So we have given this process absolutely as much time as we responsibly can. We have been negotiating this agreement for 18 months now. And it is time now to deploy the authorization that our members gave us. We have exhausted the other possibilities, and that is why we're doing it now. As to your other question as to the impact on games, union games will be struck, and anyone who is curious about a particular title and whether that title is struck, there is a search function built into our website that will allow you to go. It really works best if you have the SAG-AFTRA production ID, and we really encourage people to use that as much as possible. Code names, if you do not put them in exactly right, you may have to follow up by email to get a firm answer to your query, but that information is available.
Thank you, Ray. Anyone on the dais follow-ups? Are we good with that? Terrific. Let's move on. And as I call on you, please let us know your outlet. Jason Nelson.
Hello, Jason Nelson, Decrypt Media. I covered the strikes last year in Hollywood and across the country. What have you learned from that strike that might be applied to this one? And also, are you planning on having physical picket lines like last time? And what less have you prepared for heat and things like that, especially for people in Los Angeles? Right now we're close to 100 degrees. So have you made any plans to deal with that?
Yeah, I want to talk briefly about what we learned from the last strike as a member of the TV Theatrical Negotiating Committee. I'll hit you with the really most important point, and that is that we're talking about emerging technology that is going to affect the entire world. We just happen to be the canary in the coal mine. We are setting a precedent for how the workforce in general, both in the United States and around the world, is going to be treated. Are they going to use this new emergent technology as tools for creatives and for workers to create efficiency? Or is this tool going to be used by executives to remove the worker? That's why this fight, the fight that came before and this one that follows on, has to build upon it. Because it's really, really important that we as workers in the labor environment in general understand that we have rights and that we're not here to just be wiped out.
And while we're certainly not going to give away the strike playbook today, I think that you can expect to see us on the streets at rallies and in other actions. And of course, we are going to take into consideration weather, temperature, and all other factors that might affect the health of our members. Thank you, Jason. And moving on, Kalia Richardson.
Hi, I'm Kalia Richardson with Rolling Stone. My question is somewhat similar, comparing it to the TV theatrical contract of last year. I wanted to know, I think some issues that some actors are presently having when it comes to AI protections is it seems like a condition of employment. So I'm curious to know within the current, interactive media agreement that you guys are bargaining on, how you will navigate video game companies maybe enforcing AI protections or AI consent forms as a condition of employment, if that makes sense.
Ray, I think that's probably for you, particularly with regard to anything you're seeing now.
Yeah, I mean, I think I understand the question and the fact that, perhaps there will be jobs where the employer will expect to be able to digitally replicate the person who is taking that job and may require that as a condition of any particular individual being hired. It is precisely because we know that there is that desire and there is that leverage dynamic between employers and individual performers that we have to have robust, collectively bargained protections in that space. It is not enough for an individual performer to negotiate their own protections with an employer. We have to have collectively bargained minimums of protection so that if a performer finds themselves in that circumstance, and that is something they're willing to do, they can take that job and still sleep at night and know that they haven't put themselves out of future work by agreeing to a digital replication for a video game. We need our members to be able to do the work that employers need done, but only pursuant to minimum standards that protect them, and that's why we're having this fight.
Thank you, Ray. And Jonathan Handel. We're not hearing you, Jonathan. Do you want to unmute?
There we are. Am I unmuted? I should be now.
You are, yes. Thank you. Your question?
Great. Thank you. My question is for Ray, and if I understand the presentation correctly, the main or perhaps only issue remaining between the parties is our AI protections with regard to performance capture. Could you elaborate on that a bit as to whether that's a correct understanding and what the issues are with regard to performance capture? In other words, are they ruling it totally out of AI protections, or what exactly?
Yeah, I mean, there is technically another issue left on the table about the effective date of wage increases, Jonathan, but that is not the issue that brings us to this point. What brings us to this point is AI. Certainly, the scope of AI protections is one of two major issues, along with how we deal with generative artificial intelligence and purely synthetic performance, and the scope of those digital replica protections and ensuring that our movement performers are covered by those protections, that is, probably the biggest fight in front of us. And until we feel confident that the protections will be extended to all our members working under this agreement, we're not going to be able to reach a conclusion to this negotiation, and that is going to require us to remain on strike until that happens.
Are you satisfied with the voice performance provisions on AI?
I think there is work to be done on voice performance as well, and there are holes even in what is being offered to voice performers. So I don't want to completely emphasize the motion performer side of this, because no, we're not completely there on voice performers either.
Thank you, Ray and Jonathan. Yes, of course,
Can I add
please.
to that answer? Jonathan, you followed the TV theatrical strike in depth, so you understand what we received in generative AI protections there, and how a lot of the membership felt about that. So let me be really clear. What we have on the table right now is a lot less than what we've achieved in any other contract. A lot less. So many holes that it puts our existence as performers in jeopardy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zeke. Okay, and to Lo Dodds.
Hi there, Aya Dodds for The Independent. Forgive me if this information was mentioned earlier and I missed it. I sort of received a phone call during the conference that I had to answer, but can you give me a sense of how many members are, I guess every member is affected by the strike insofar as if they want to do work in video games, they're affected by this. But I guess, do you have a sense of like how many members are regularly doing work in video games? Like, when one says, well, 160,000 people won't be doing work that they were doing previously, I guess that's not the case because not all of those people will be doing video games work. So I don't know, do you have like a ballpark number on just how many people are really going to be engaged in this strike with regards to their primary work?
I'm not even going to direct that because I think all four of them would say the same thing. All 160,000 of our members are covered by the strike order. Ray, do you want to go into any of the details of Lo's question?
I don't have a number offhand for how many of our members regularly work under the IMA, but I think that what Pam has said is really the most salient point, which is every member of the union is subject to the strike order and affected by this strike.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lo. And next is Sarah Parvini.
Hey, can you hear me?
We can. Thank you and welcome.
Great, thanks. This is Sarah with the AP. My question is related to a statement that I got from the representative for the studio bargaining group, who said that their offer was directly responsive to SAG-AFTRA's concerns and that it extended meaningful AI protections that include requiring consent and fair compensation to all performers working under the IMA. I'm wondering if there's any response, on your end to that specific statement that their proposal is for all performers. I know previously when we've talked, you've mentioned some of the disparity on covering voice versus physical performance. And so any type of clarification or comment on that would be great.
Right. Yeah, I think that there are going to be a few people who want to respond on this, but let's start with the negotiator.
Sure, I'm happy to respond to that. I think the use of the word performer is key to understanding what the industry is really saying, because the industry has told us point blank that they do not necessarily consider everyone who is rendering movement performance to be a performer that is covered by the collective bargaining agreement. They dispute that coverage. You heard Andy reference the fact in her comments that she is being referred to and her work is being referred to in this negotiation as being simply data, right? Her performance is treated as data, and therefore, when the employers have framed their offer in terms of performance, they are actually potentially excluding a whole class of members from that. And you heard as well, there are requirements in there such as that, the digital replica has to be identifiable as the natural performer that did the work. And when Andy is performing as a zombie soldier, you're not going to know that it's Andy. And so when the protections are framed that way, it'll say the words on and off camera performers in the proposal. But when you read all the elements of it and compare it to the industry's bargaining positions and to the reality of how this work gets done, there are actually people being left out.
And anything to add here?
I thought that was quite comprehensive.
I have something to add.
Please do.
If it said on the piece of paper that they put across the table what they're saying, that all performers are covered, we wouldn't be sitting here. It's disingenuous. I'm sorry. All right. There is a base level that protects all of the members of this union, and that is what we expect, and that is what we demand. And that's why we're here, because we are not getting that. So you can say something, put it in the contract if you mean it.
Thank you, Zeke. Jeremy Fooster.
Hi, Jeremy Fooster, The Wrap. Several months ago, SAG-AFTRA reached a deal on consent and compensation for its members with Replica AI. I'm curious if there is anything that was in that agreement that the video game companies are not agreeing to or are part of the sticking points in this contract.
Ray, do you want to?
I think the short answer is yes. The union approved that agreement because it contained the elemental protections that we are looking for in this space. We wouldn't have approved it otherwise. And no, we are not achieving everything that we are getting to in the replica. In this negotiation, we have not achieved everything that is in the replica deal. And again, I think if we were in that place, we would be announcing a deal and not a strike.
Are there specific things like, is it around consent, around compensation? Is it trying to pinpoint specific things in that this AI company agreed to that these publishers are not as forthcoming on? Just trying to pull out something specific here.
I mean, if one of the committee members has a better specific recollection of the terms of the replica deal, you should feel free to respond to that. I don't have that deal up in front of me, so I don't want to attempt a live red line.
Okay.
We can get back to Jeremy also if afterward, if that's
I can
better.
answer broadly.
Yeah, go for it.
Consent, compensation, and transparency. The consent that we have achieved with Replica Studios is not mirrored with what the employers are offering. The compensation is not mirrored with what the employers are offering, and there is almost no transparency, which makes it even more difficult because this technology, like I said, with a digital replica, can make a performance as me when I'm not in the room. And if there's no transparency and I don't know it's even occurring, there's no way to go back and ensure that we get proper consent and compensation.
Thank you,
Great.
Zeke. Ethan Gach.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we sure can.
Yes, with Kotaku. First question, has there been any AI usage already at one of these companies that would run afoul of the rules that you're seeking? And how is that being dealt with? And then two, you mentioned the carve out for people appearing at Comic-Con this weekend. Are there any other carve outs in the coming weeks or months for specific games or events that would also allow people to speak about them?
Go ahead, Sarah.
I was going to say there are some nuances. If you're compared to, for example, the TV theatrical strike rules, there are some differences to pay attention to, but those will apply broadly and comprehensively after this one carve out for this weekend. Wait, there was another part of that question?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Could you repeat the first part? We just skipped right over that.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
Yes, the first part was, are there any existing companies for this agreement that are already using AI that would run afoul of these rules, and how is that being dealt with? Basically, have people's performances who are members of the guild already been captured in this way and possibly being replicated without their knowledge?
If we had those at hand, I think the course of bargaining would be somewhat different.
Yeah, I think we're not going to name companies, but Ray, Sarah, Andy, anyone?
I would just say we wouldn't necessarily know. I mean, I personally do have a concern that it is happening, but I'm not in a position to, actually cite chapter and verse to support that concern. but it is our concern that it is happening, and that we without the protections that we're looking for, that we wouldn't even necessarily know that it's happening.
Thank you, Ray. Cynthia Littleton.
Hi, thank you, Cynthia Littleton with Variety. Forgive me if this has been addressed, but can you give me a sense of the scope of the strike in terms of video game companies that have deals with the union? Would you say, is it 80% of the companies that have union contracts with SAG in terms of the scope of the video game publishers affected? And then the second part of that is, can you give us a ballpark on how many SAG-AFTRA members have worked under the interactive contract in the last couple of years? Thank you. Thanks for doing this. It's helpful. And also, while I have the mic, can I ask for just a little bit more clarity on Comic-Con and why it's exempt? That is the burning question from all the folks that we have down in San Diego right now.
So, Ray, would you like me to read the covered companies from the news release?
I mean, yes, you can read the covered companies from the news release, but the short answer is every company is struck unless it is signed to a tiered budget independent agreement, or it's going to sign the company is going to sign an interim agreement. Every company is at least potentially struck under this. So that is the scope of the strike, basically. Unless we have a standalone deal with you that contains the terms and protections we need, your company is struck.
So, Cynthia, the members of the convenience bargaining group with whom we're directly negotiating is listed in the release. I can read them now if you'd like to do that. But the important point is what Ray just said, every company, unless under the exceptions that he noted.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, no, you don't need to read. And the number of folks, and just a little more elaboration on Comic-Con.
So the number of folks, I think we have not pulled that number, but again, it's important to note that every member of SAG-AFTRA, all 160,000 of our members, are covered under the strike order on this action.
Great, thanks.
And I hesitate to guess, but we can potentially follow up with you afterward on the other number.
Thank you. And then Comic-Con, can you just explain?
I think it's just out of consideration of the fact that this is happening very quickly, and our members are no doubt kind of going to take some time to absorb the full scope of the strike order and the rules and all of that other stuff. We feel very passionately that being at Comic-Con in order to share what it is we need, why we need it, is the best way to serve this action, to be visible, to be loud, and to be open to conversation. And so that's one reason why we decided to allow that moment for folks to take their time and understand how exactly to be in compliance, while at the same time sharing this message as broadly and as quickly as we can.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, Cynthia. Okay, and the last question is a follow-up from Shannon Lau. Shannon, is your hand up with a new question, or?
Yes, that's right. I also see that Ash has a question, but maybe I can just jump in here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I passed right over that. Apologies. Sorry, Ash, the record button is over your hand. Shannon, if you don't mind, he is ahead of you. Let's go to Ash.
Okay, sounds good.
Ash Parrish.
Hi, I'm Ash Parrish at The Verge. I just wanted to clarify the specific sticking point is that you are negotiating protections for both your voice and your motion performers. And it seems like, based on what I heard, because I jumped in a little late, is that the video game companies are not extending those protections to the motion performers. Yes, the voice performers, but not the motion performers. Is that correct?
Not entirely. So there are three kinds of performances generally that happen in video games: voice, face, body. Okay, because you can capture all of those. Those are all capture of performance. Each one of them individually and collectively are at risk with the proposal that they've put across the table. And until all three of them are not at risk and safely contained with the proposal that they put across the table, we're not done.
Okay, I gotcha. And if I could ask one more follow-up question, I know that you guys have a website where you can put in codes to see what work is struck. Is there any kind of resource for people who will not have access to those codes, because you're talking about like code names and reporters and journalists are not going to have access to those codes? Is there a way that we will be able to access that like search tool and find out what video games are being struck?
So, and anyone can use the site, but you will need that type of information in order to get a result. And that is both so that to acknowledge that secrecy is a large part of this industry and to stay within the bounds of the code names and other things that allow us to do this work, while also making sure that anyone, including employers, can verify that their status is correct. And so that is the compromise that has been made.
Thanks, Sarah. Does that answer your question, Shannon? I'm guessing that's a yes. All right. Thank you all very much. That we've come to the conclusion of our questions. I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Cynthia. We've come to the Shannon, your hand is up. Is that a new question?
Yeah, sorry. It
No
doesn't let
problem.
me unmute when you were asking me, so I wasn't able to reply, actually.
No problem.
Yeah, so now I can ask my question. So I'm really concerned about or really have a question about Grand Theft Auto 6. I think that would be the biggest game that could be potentially affected by this strike. I was looking it up on the website. It says it is affected, but it says it could be non-union. So I'm wondering if you can provide some clarity on that. That's a game from Take-Two, which is mentioned in the press release.
Ray, do you want to take this?
I would not try to answer that question here. I think we should go back and look at the information with respect to that title. I couldn't tell you without looking.
Thanks, Ray. I do encourage everyone, though, to please check out the website at sagaftra.org/videogamestrike. We have copious amounts of information, including FAQs. You'll be able to find the strike rules there and understand exactly what the strike order means and who's covered and how. And so take a look at that. And if there are no other questions, we all want to thank you very much for your time and your interest today. And if you have follow-ups or additional questions, please feel free to reach out to Shira Reich, Linda Dorff, or me at news@sagaftra.org. And thank you again for joining us today.
Hi, everyone. What's up, Comic-Con? It's so nice to see all of you. Yeah, let's get the energy up. It's the morning. You're probably hungover. Let's get the energy going. Hi, everybody. I'm Ashley. You might know me as Aloy from Horizon Zero Dawn and Horizon Forbidden West. Thank you. Or Tiny Tina in Borderlands. And I'm so excited to have you guys here for Game Actors on Game Actors. Let me, without further ado, bring out our lovely panelists so we can get this thing going. First up, we have the wonderful Shannon Woodward. You may know her as Dina from The Last of Us. Yeah. Westworld, and she is in Riven, the sequel to Miss, but her character's a secret, so I can't spoil it. She told me.
Don't ruin it.
I'm not going to spoil it. Next, we have a dear friend of mine. He plays Katalo in Horizon Forbidden West. And Charles in Red Dead Redemption 2, Noshir Dalal. And then last but not least, Sarah, who plays Cube Queen in Fortnite and Corsica and Hi-Fi Rush and is the chair of the Interactive Negotiating Committee, Sarah Almale. So thank you guys again all for coming here. This is a panel about game performance, the art behind game performance, how much we love game performance. And if you don't know, as of midnight this morning, all of us are on strike for video games.
Yes. I love these guys.
Thank you for that support. That really means
Thanks,
so
guys.
much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Wow, that was awesome. Thank you. Thank you all so much for that support. A strike is always a last resort. No one wants to go on strike. But we're up against, frankly, an existential threat to our professions in the form of AI. As you probably heard from other entertainment strikes last year, AI is a huge concern, and it's especially a huge concern for our professions, for voice actors and movement performers. And so we have to take a stand because the protections that our employers have put across the table are woefully insufficient and are going to put a lot of people out of work. And so we're going to talk about what we love to do, and we're excited to share that with you. And I believe what we're about to tell you showcases how irreplaceable we are. Thank you. So yeah, is there anything you want to add, Sarah?
Oh, just that Comic-Con is exempt from our strike rules. Which means we all get to speak freely as planned about this work that we love so very much. So if you see people talking about projects that they're in and everything, that's cool this weekend. We're really excited for this to be this action to be about being visible and being loud. About the stuff that we work on, the fact that we love working on it, and of course the things that we need to protect it forever. So just for everyone's heads up for this weekend.
Yeah. So I'm going to do like a little voice actor, movement performer 101 for y'all, just so that we're all on the same page, so we're not saying stuff that's like going over everyone's heads. So games performance is usually in 3 categories: voice, facial capture, and movement. All of those can be combined sometimes, just some of them can be combined. And what makes our profession unique is that we're often doing it in a black box of sorts. So we almost never get scripts beforehand unless we're doing motion capture. So you might show up to a voice session, have no idea what game you're playing, have no idea what character you're playing, and you just have to read a script cold and just go and be able to perform it.
Same applies to movement, by the way. They show up and they're like, hey, no, you can speak to that.
Yep.
Well, what do you, be this creature. Okay, now be a human character. It's just like also same on the spot kind of improvisational work.
Yeah. So we have to be super efficient, super agile, and just very good at our jobs, frankly, and being able to react to things on the spot because we often don't get much prep. Also, if you're a voice actor, you are just staring at a screen and you have a director and you have to create like entire worlds and conversations in your own head. And movement, anything on a performance capture stage is the same thing. You have like a box that's supposed to be a truck or a like cylinder that's supposed to be a horse, and you have to use your imagination a lot.
Or sometimes the horse is bigger than the door. And you're like, that's the horse?
So there's a lot of imagination involved, a lot of filling in the blanks. Sarah, did I miss anything, or did I miss anything?
I don't think so. That's the gist of it. I mean, I can speak to this and I also want to hear Shannon's experience moving into games after working mainly in other categories. But as a director, I think it gave me a fresh appreciation for that. What I see when I work with voice actors mainly in the booth is this fearlessness, just an absolute trust. We know, I think, or many, you may have heard that acting is reacting. And so the idea that you have to provide everything you're reacting to, if you're on a movie set, you have explosions to react to, scene partners to react to. So we're acting for 2 or 50 at once at all times. And not seeing these things, the vulnerability and the trust that the person guiding you, that I feel really responsible for, is going to give you the information you need and help paint that picture for you, and that it's going to be the right fit for the game. That's all an act of faith. And I see actors fling themselves, with abandon and fearlessness and without second guessing, unafraid to look or sound stupid, creating immediate variety just to explore those possibilities really fully. And it's really moving to me. It's really moving to me to watch actors be that fearless and brave and vulnerable and flexible and imaginative. So that's just sort of that's the only icing I would add to that.
Yeah, and that's like a huge part also, I would say too, of movement and voices, especially having to not be afraid of looking stupid, but also the idea that like you have to be able to create 3 distinct characters. Yep. Given any session or any movement performance that you're doing, because that's part of our contract, is that the employer can be like, I want you to play 3 characters. So you might go into a session, have no idea what game it is, have never seen a script, and then have to create 3 characters on the spot that are all distinct, and serve different purposes for the game with no prep. So it's pretty wild.
Can I speak to that just for a second? Just because, and I promised Ashley I would not veer into contract nerd. But this process, I never thought I would be interested in contracts or understand them, and now I'm here. And that is a process that, of education that I have with our incredible staff and my fellow peers on this committee. It's really not a one person, I'm chair, but it is a team effort across the board. But is that connection between the contract and the kind of actor you become because of what's in your contract and what you negotiate? 3 characters is in the contract. That means you have to be versatile and create variety. 4 hours means up to 4 hours means you have to be comfortable performing and being the only one talking, more or less, for 4 hours straight or 8 hours straight moving. These terms are like, create this scaffolding, and games performers thus far have become these incredible specialists and athletes that are finely tuned to those requirements. And so what goes in your contract, understanding what's in your contract and understanding the kind of artist you need to be is really important, I think, and why contract negotiations are so deeply important as well.
I also don't know what else employers would want from us.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like you can record an entire game in 4 hours. Like, is that not enough?
I've done so many games in one session. So many. 4 hours.
It's wild. Anyway, okay, I want to talk to our lovely friends that are sitting next to us. So,
yeah, hey guys.
Hi.
Hello. Hi.
So Nosh, you started as solely a movement performer.
Right.
Now you're a jack of all trades. And
a master of all. Master of all.
Nosh likes to do this thing where he acts like he's not extremely great at everything that he does, and we're going to.
I'm brilliant at everything I do. That was sarcasm.
They don't know. So I really want you to talk about this one story that you told me, because I just think it's like such a cool encapsulation of how much movement and actor choice impacts characters. Can you talk about the book Charles has in Red Dead Redemption 2?
Sure. So there's a scene which apparently never actually made it into the game, where everyone knows the. Has anyone here played Red Dead Redemption 2? Awesome. Outlaws for life, baby. So there's a scene where there's a rather unsavory character named Micah who says some super racist stuff to Charles, and Charles then throws him halfway across the camp and finishes with like, "Eat that!" right? And like walks off. And so there was another scene that comes later where Roger, playing Arthur, comes upon Charles, who's now sitting kind of in his tent, and the description was Charles is sitting there reading a book, and the way the scene plays out is Arthur says like, "Charles, are you okay?" And Charles gets up, throws the book, goes like, "No, I'm not okay," and kind of storms off. And so this was, I think, my first or second day on set as Charles. I was very new to it. First day, no one would even tell me what the game was. It was a real trial by fire. So we did the scene as requested, and all I kept thinking about is this is like a gang of outlaws. We're on the run, we're shooting people, robbing banks, doing all kinds of heinous stuff. And at this time also, like, how many people know how to read? But Charles, among all of his personal effects, which you'd have to, especially being an outlaw, you'd have to be able to pack up and move really quickly, right? So like weight is important, what you can put in your pack is important, all of those things are valuable. So he has a book that he's carried around from place to place. And all I kept thinking was like, that's a really strange thing for an outlaw to do, to be so emotionally ramped up that he then goes and finds solace in reading. And at this point, I'd been told that Charles was going to be this kind of large, menacing character who, like, you want in the fight, because in the fight, he wrecks everybody. And that's kind of what he does. He's like a super angry, wreck everybody kind of dude. But I just had an instinct, and so I asked if I could do it one more time, and they said sure, and I took a second, and I kind of connected with Roger real quick. And then we started the scene, and Rogers, comes in and says, like, "Charles, are you okay?" And I went to throw the book and kind of realized what I was doing and kind of held it in both hands and was just like, no, I'm not okay. And walked off. And I was like, they're going to hate it. But I wanted to try it. And we stopped, and all of a sudden they were like, "Hold, please." And there was a whole talk at Video Village. They got Rockstar UK and all these other things going on. And I'm not going to pretend to know everything that was going on behind the scenes, but from there on, the direction that Charles was changed, and he kind of became a moral compass for the game and like a guide for Arthur, like a person that Arthur could go to, you know, and seek like wisdom and advice. And I love that turn, because I think, you know, the way the game was originally going, spoiler alert, Charles would not have survived. You know, he would have been too mean to live. So I really love that journey, and that they were willing to take a chance on seeing something new. You know?
To me, that's such a perfect encapsulation of how much an actor can have impact. I mean, you change the trajectory of that character's entire storyline by choosing not to throw a book. That's wild. You know what I mean? A computer wouldn't do that.
It's also
Just one.
it's a real staple of television too. You know, like you do a pilot of a show, and I've had this experience a lot of times, like the pilot for like Westworld, or we were doing some bit, and I remember Jonah Nolan was directing the episode, and he was like, "It really feels like you want to swear." And I was like, really? Oh, I'll try. He goes, no. It's fine. It just, would you swear? I was like, yeah. I'd be like, I don't want to fucking do that. And he's like, that's right. When we came back and we started the show, all of a sudden everything was fuck this, fuck that. And I was like, okay, here we are. You know, and I'm just using that as an example that, like, you know, people, they cast someone and then it starts to meld, you know, like, because years go by, you go from, you know, a nebulous idea of a character to someone that's a human person, and you know, it is the humanity of it that evolves these stories, you know, and their own associations with projections of you and what they think of you, and you know.
That transitions to a question I have for you, Shannon.
Okay.
So when I met you, I was like, wow, this person is like such a kind and self-possessed and confident person. And I feel like I see so much of that in Dina. I see so much of those pieces of you in Dina. And so I'm curious, like, if you pull from sort of bits of your personality when you're creating a character, do you make yourself an empty vessel for the muse? Like, how do you kind of approach that process?
I mean, sorry. Well, first I empty out my organs. You don't want to hear about it. It's a lot.
Eels do that, don't they? Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's another story.
Yeah.
Headline, Shannon Woodward, eel.
The first thing I do is, you know, I remember somebody saying this to me when I was really young, and I do think it's true that, you know, first of all, nobody's ever going to do the same performance, right? Like, it's, and I actually don't really rehearse much or do much work before I go to work because of that, like, when I go to read a scene with you, I have no idea what it brings to mind for you, right? So, like, I could be like, hey, how's it going? And your answer could be like, fine. And it could be kind, or it could be like aggressive. It could be like, yeah, fine. You know, so anything can mean anything, right? And words mean different things to other people. They're such hammers. So I really show up. I know my lines. I think I understand the writer's intention, at least to the best of my own ability. And then we shoot. Right. You know, and it's like I'm listening, and it's fine-tuning it, like, oh, this is interesting, I just heard this idea, like, I want to try it again because I heard something else this time when you said it, and now I want to hear it that way and see how it changes how I react. And it really is like, I'm kind of like a caged animal. I have no idea. Like, it's like I open my cage and I'm like, yeah, just roll, let's go. And that really is my process. And, you know, for The Last of Us, it was such a easy job for me because I loved The Last of Us. I was obsessed. And, you know, Hallie Gross wrote on the first season of Westworld. And over the hiatus, we were at somebody's birthday party, and I was like, oh, what are you doing on the break? And she was like, oh, I'm actually, I'm just like moonlighting at this video game company. I was like, oh, I play like a lot of video games. What company? And she was like, Naughty Dog, yeah. And I was like, I think Lost Legacy had just come out. Like, I was like, well, it's definitely not another Uncharted game. I was like,
I love that you were doing the gamer math.
I was just I was like, what are they making? The Last of Us 2? And she like kind of went pale in the way that like I would if I was doing an interview about Westworld, which like we were not allowed to say anything, you know? And I'd be like, and I was like, I know that face. Just please tell Neil Druckmann I would die to have like one line in the game. And I meant like, get down. And I kind of went back and forth. And then like 6 months later, she was like, there's like a role. Would you read? And I was like, I would love to. That's like, it's like somebody coming to you and being like, would you like to pretend that you were in Star Wars in front of George Lucas for like an hour? You're like, yeah, 100%. So I really just showed up and was like, I mean, I knew Ellie. We all know, everybody loved her, right? Everybody loves Ellie. It was so easy to go pretend to be in love with Ellie, you know?
That sounds like the easiest job ever.
I was sobbing in that audition, and Neil was like, wow, that was amazing. And I was like, it's psychotic. It was psychotic, that's what it was. And that's what I did every day. I just showed up and was like, no, that's my girlfriend. That was easy. And they paid me.
That's my reality.
It was the best. I loved it. Anyway. So that's my process, is to be psychotic.
So, Sarah.
Yes, ma'am.
You are a director as well as a lovely actor. And I was wondering if you could talk about being surprised by an actor when you're directing them, and also explain what that means.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's my favorite part. I feel like because it actually dovetails really nicely with you, because you're like, yeah, I don't really know. Actors surprising themselves and surprising me as a director is the best part, actually. Like, I mean, there is this need to have, and as a director, it's extremely important that you are able to understand what is the compass of the character, what's essential, what is required specifically to serve the story that you need to tell and how that interacts with all the other characters and components of the story, and what's negative space, what's there to discover. Because I think especially when we're talking about machines, which we won't do too much, like you don't have, that machine isn't going to help you discover, you're going to kind of just hope to get close to what you're picturing already in your head. Because they don't have these instincts. They're not synthesizing years of life experience. They don't have this kind of our own generative ability on hand.
They don't fall in love with Ashley Johnson.
They don't.
They should.
Which they should, but they don't.
Everyone should.
If we were only making machines that fell in love with Ashley Johnson, that'd be fine.
This is taking a turn.
That would be fine. That would be fine.
But anyway, yes. So knowing what's important to serve the character, and then what you're open to kind of hear, collaborating with the actor on or being surprised by is so key. And that to me is when the character becomes real. So you have your compass in your mind and you're in session, and so many times an actor does something that surprises them or was unintentional or even riffing between takes, and that's happened to me as an actor. Where they do some sort of detail, like I remember there was an actor in Fortnite who was doing it was just, the prompt was like, just talk to yourself as you're stalking around your lair, and started doing like sword fighting efforts, like he was like fencing himself, and it was so nerdy, and I was like, this is a villain, and he's just like sort of shadow fencing in this really goofy, adorable, like it was just such a funny layer. And so often that kind of little instinct or just a sudden solar flare will be like, no, that's it. This process is marble, and you're sort of slowly removing things and discovering things until a character becomes real. And so like the character really isn't real, I think, until you found a few extra layers that you didn't expect and couldn't see coming. And it's just so beautiful. Like that's the joy. I see teams, just really energized by being part of that process. And some of them don't know how to talk to actors, and that's why they hire directors, right, to do that. And so just shifting from that perspective of like, I've done all this work, mapping this, I'm a dev now, mapping my world and kind of thinking how things should fit into it, and discovering the joy of actually leaving some of that space and finding some discoveries, and then going back and changing the world because of that, to Nosha's point, is just, it's so exciting to see their eyes light up when they realize the power of this process. So that was a really long-winded way to answer that, but yeah. That's
Collaborative art, baby.
Collaboration, baby.
Yeah, I mean, not to talk, okay. I'm going to talk about my own experience because that's why I'm up
I think
here.
you should.
Yeah. That was a big part of Aloy is, John Gonzalez, who wrote the first game, he talked, I think in the press and to me, about how a lot of what I did in session influenced his writing going forward. I was really conscious with Aloy of wanting her to not feel, games often can deal in archetypes, right? You could be a Marine, or a space marine, or I'm just kidding.
I'm always getting typecast.
There are lots of different options, but we deal in archetypes a lot, and I think that's part of the medium because players are inhabiting these characters. You know, there's a sort of like, you know, you want a kind of an easy sort of connection point, right, to these characters. But our job as performers is to not make them feel generic, is to make them feel specific, both specific and universal if you're playing a player character in particular. So I was really conscious of wanting Aloy to feel, you know, all the things that you want a protagonist to feel: strong, capable, intelligent, but I wanted her to have levels and nuance. And a big part of what I injected into her was her sort of humor and her sarcasm, and that she can be kind of condescending sometimes. And that, you know, and that came out a lot more in Forbidden West, that she has this, like, you know, this ticking time bomb on her, and she's a little less patient with people, and she's a little less willing to explain things to people, and that she needs those layers because otherwise she's not a character, she's not interesting, you can't connect to her if she's just a sort of perfect bulletproof person. And so that was a big part of Zero Dawn for me, was leaning into that and feeling, and it was scary for me because it was my first really, really big role. And I went home a lot being like, am I a horrible, like, are they just like, God, this bitch, like, she just can't. Oh, I wish she wouldn't say that, and what about this? Like, but what I've been told is that there's a lot of appreciation for that, and it helped really shape her going forward. And I feel like her humor and her sort of sarcasm, that piece of her, is such a big part of who she is now. And I have to take credit for it, even though I'm bad at taking credit for
I'm going to make you. You deserve credit for that.
But that is a big part. I mean, the collaboration piece is such a huge, huge part of it. Not to just totally write off everything that my brother did on Borderlands 2, because it's a very funny game, but my favorite line is the actor that played Handsome Jack, Damien. He just had this idea to eat pretzels in the booth at one point while he was taunting the player. So he's actively eating pretzels, and then he goes, these pretzels suck. And it's to me, it's the funniest line in the game. I love my brother, and there's lots of funny lines that he's written, but that's my favorite line because it was just something Damien did. And he actively was actually just eating food in the booth, and it just colors this character in such a great way that he doesn't give a shit about you so much that he's willing to just eat as he's talking to you. And he almost forgets you're there to talk about the fact that his snack sucks. It just gives such a depth to that character and so much comedy that's so specific that you wouldn't write a line like that. I also write, and you don't write a line like that. That is something that an actor discovers, and then you go, oh my God, that's really good. And now that becomes part of the character.
I had an experience can I share an
yes,
experience so Lizzie Carmine, I've said this before, was written as, speaking of sort of archetypes, you know, they were looking for kind of a Michelle Rodriguez, really stoic, tough, you know, one of the guys, but almost scarier, but in this really, you know, kind of serious way. But in the writing, there was this fearless, YOLO, kind of unpredictable chaos gremlin, just energy. I think that you meet her and she says, we're swearing? We're already swearing. She's just fuck it. And she drives a truck into one of these bugs. And I was like, fuck it energy. Okay, I can work with that. And so I just let fly. And sort of throughout the main campaign, the game, I sort of had more of that. I was riffing a little bit and kind of adding a little bit more of that slightly unhinged energy. And what was beautiful about that process was that we still had, you know, what hadn't been written yet was the multiplayer campaign. And so you can play as Lizzie in Gears 5 multiplayer, and all of that was kind of being written. And I didn't know what to expect off of a Gears title as far as collaboration, but it was one of the most rewarding collaboration experiences of my life because they just leaned into that even harder. And so all of her multiplayer lines are absolutely banana sandwich. And they recorded all these emotes too. And so even the things that happened between takes, at first I was so mad because they kept rolling throughout. And I did this really stupid Sarah laugh. I have a lot of laughs, and most of them are really unflattering. And so I let one of these things fly, and they snagged it, and that became the laugh emote for the character, which players really loved and started spamming, and to the point where they loved it so much, and then they hated it so much because they were spamming it all over the place. And that time cycle was 2 seconds, but it was bananas. I'll try to do it. I think it's sort of like a goat. It's just and they decided that was cool for their soldier. I don't know why. But I love that choice from them. I mean, I was so grateful that they were.
I'm making that my ring.
Oh no. So yeah, even the accidents, you know.
Nosh, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about movement versus voice, because you, again, started as a movement performer. Now you do voice, now you do PCAP, you do it all, baby, and you make it look easy. And I'm just sort of wondering, like, how you approach those different, not mediums, but different ways of acting, like
disciplines, maybe.
Disciplines, yeah.
Well, when you're doing purely movement in a mocap stage, unlike some of the work like that they've done with HMC and whatnot, there's no facial expressions, right? There's no eye tracking, no face tracking, and oftentimes you're not speaking at all. They don't record your voice. So the thing that you have to become really good at is showing psychology through movement, right? And where this comes into play is, like, for example, I got started, the very first mocap gig I ever did was a game called The Order 1886. Yeah.
Nice.
It was amazing. And that was at Sony San Diego. And they brought me in purely to do stunts. So I was doing Rex and combat and all that stuff. But one of the things that they found was, whereas when a lot of the other stunt guys would like take a beating and go down and kind of come back up, I would adjust the way I come back up based on who the character is, right? Is this a character who comes up and he comes up like, oh, you're fucked now, you know what I mean? Or is it a character that comes up like, I don't want to do this, but I have to stay in the fight because this is important to me, and so like, I'm gonna get my ass beat, but like, I'm ready for it, you know what I mean? Like, depending on how I moved, you could see what the character was going through, and I think that was the thing that got me hired and kept me hired for, you know, multiple games. And then I auditioned for Call of Duty Black Ops 3 and did a PCAP character for that. And that was my first time. When you do performance capture, you almost always have voiceover at the tail end for all the other in-game stuff you have to do. And I'd never done voiceover ever, but I do a lot of gun stuff. So they had, you know, Lieutenant Khalil's in there, and like literally I'm in the booth, like this is my mic, and I'm like this. And I'm like doing whatever, and finally, like the director, Keith Farley's like, no, Sheer, there's no gun there, and you don't actually need to hold it by your face. In fact, we would ask that you don't. I was like, oh, this is voiceover. And that's a whole other challenge, because I was so used to being a physical performer that I relied on body language to do things, and I was like, oh wait, like they don't actually even see what I'm doing, so now I have to use my voice to show what I'm doing instead of, you know, like to create that visual in their brain. And then PCAP is obviously like the kind of most wonderful amalgamation of the two. And I think the really fun thing with PCAP is, unlike in on camera where the camera is set, right? And so like the director can decide where the focus is going to go. Like if the camera is the player and the player is like, oh, I'm going to smash this chest and rob this place blind while they're having a crisis over here, like they can do it, you know? And so I think our job is to, in our movement, show that something is going on that the player should get invested in, right? While with our face and voice, making sure that the performance is real and natural and subtle. And it's a slight disparity. It's not huge, you know? But like, if it's on camera, like, and you're telling me like, I just got, you know, I have cancer, like that conversation will be very still.
Right.
You know what I mean? But like in PCAP, that might be like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
right.
Yeah.
And that's enough.
Yeah, could you?
No problem. That's my cue.
And hopefully that's enough, right, for the player, whatever they're doing, to kind of pop around and be like, I want to know more about what's going on over there, and come in and join that story.
Right.
You know, and I love that. I love that process.
Can I point something out too, that like the evolution of that practice too has gone from something that's flat and that won't read physically, but it's not like, you know, like we're out of this sort of phase of like just accepting gesture for the sake of gesture, and
the guy brush.
yeah, you know, like this, just, you know what I mean? It's not that. It's so, and your skill and your finesse and your artistry is in knowing how to sell something in a way that's not too much or that's too off base, but it's not too small to read. Like that's true across voice and movement alike. And can I just say, as a director, I love when I have to watch an actor's energy. If they're really flinging themselves on the ground, in a voiceover session, I might be like, hey, you might need to conserve. We have to get through stuff. I want to watch your tank. But I would tell you to use your gun. Maybe don't block the mic. You know what I mean? And I want to point that out because when we talk about what performers are giving, even when they're focused on one aspect of performance, we often recruit other stuff. I'm very physical when I do voiceover, and it really helps me to have a holistic reaction and not shut down one part of the system. It works better that way. And so voice actors are very physical, and physical movers yell if needed. And so I just don't want to do a discredit to how much we're giving of ourselves, even if only one piece is being captured.
Right.
I had never done voiceover before I started doing The Last of Us, and I'm a big gamer. Also, I see a really great Millennium costume over there. I just want to shout that. It's really good. But I loved games, but had no... I didn't have an encyclopedic knowledge of any of the process of what I was about to walk into. So I was just an on-camera actor. So I was physical, and I recreate everything for myself in order to then find my own thoughts and keep going, because I can't predict it. So when I went in to go start doing efforts for The Last of Us, which was, we was a year, it was like a year.
Does everybody know what efforts are?
Oh, it's like,
jumps, hits,
all that stuff.
All the noises you make to react or
and
to
especially
act.
because that character is in the game for so long, there were all of these different, today we're doing shotgun, light, medium, heavy, hand, forearm, bicep, every different part of the body for every different weapon. And and there's only so much that your voice can do, so much of that stuff. But I was like, okay, trying to feel it in the different places. I am the only actor ever that I think woke up the morning after doing voiceover completely immobile. Because I couldn't move, because it would make a noise. It'd be like, Shani, you can't move your arm like that. We hear it on the mic. So I'd be like, fine, I won't move it, but And they were like, it looks crazy. But I really couldn't walk. I have so many videos of it. And I was like, I have to find a way to blend this, but I had no idea. But it was really stupid.
That's so funny.
I love that about our job. I love that we can look dumb and still come across as cool in the exact way that's needed. I think that's so freeing. I'm tired of looking cool.
Sarah.
I'm the only person who doesn't do on camera or other so I'm like, I don't want to look cool.
I think you're cool, Shannon.
Thank you
So much, I'll pay you later.
I just want to do a time check for who's going to give me a time check.
We were at 12:07, and maybe we should give it just a couple more minutes before Q&A, yeah?
Okay, great. I'm just going
Can I
to,
ask
that's going to be your job,
Sure.
Sarah, because I don't know.
Yes,
Yes,
12:15, right, Q&A?
So I think, hopefully everyone here agrees, unless it's just me. But I think oftentimes with acting, some of the best stuff happens in accidents.
Yeah.
Right? When the thing that's supposed to happen goes horribly wrong, or the actor totally forgets their line, or what have you, and something really cool comes of it because it's completely spontaneous and you kind of pivot with what's going on. Do any of you have stories of something that happened in the volume or in the booth or whatever that was oh, that was dope and it made it into the game, for example?
I do.
Aside from my goat laugh, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a moment in Horizon Forbidden West where Aloy is speaking to Studious Wadis. I was like, what is that turd's name? Studious Wadis, who's played brilliantly by Keith Farley.
Same Keith. Yeah,
same Keith that directed Nashir and told him to put the gun down. It was he's sort of just waxing poetic about the sun or whatever the bullshit, and Aloy's trying to talk to someone, and it's sort of like someone's talking in your ear and she can't fucking hear this person she needs to speak to. So it was written in the script as shut up, that I'm supposed to turn to Studious and say shut up and then go back to my conversation. And when I read that, I was kind of like, that seems, not that Aloy shouldn't be harsh, but it just seems blunt. And I wonder if there is a more, almost shut up is too much for this guy. This guy is just a little turd, and I don't need to spend that much energy on him or that much time. So I just turned and I went, shh, and then I went back to my conversation. And that became kind of a viral clip from the game, because it was just, and I felt too that it's funnier to just shush him rather than to say shut up. Shut up is sort of like just a blunt, like you would say that to someone that you hate. I don't even think about this fucker. So that to me was like a fun thing. And after I did it, they were like, keep doing that. I was like, great. And yeah, and it was also so fun because Keith is one of the nicest people in the world.
He's great.
And
Keith's
but he's so good at playing an asshole. We had a lot of fun
really
that day.
is.
But yeah, that was probably one of my moments.
I have an example, and I don't know if it's accidents, but it is improvisation. And so I think the question between an accident and an intention, and right, it's like a spectrum or debatable, right? You say accident, I say improv. But as an example that I didn't have anything to do with, very sadly, but there, some folks here may have played Spider-Man 2. Yeah. And so the process for those, for some of the characters that you meet on the streets of New York City, some of you may be familiar. Like what they did was they were like, hey, instead of, we could write all the generic stuff like, what'd you eat today? We could write all that stuff, and that's a traditional dialogue, process. They got everybody together to just hang out and improv. All of that is improv. It's like a prompt or two, and they just that magic was born of a couple actors put in different combinations, like riffing off each other. And I'm pretty sure Kritzy is talking about, what was it? There's a baby. She's like, oh, did you put glue in the diaper? What was it like? She's playing two nannies where one is like dangerously hopeless and the other is like, and GK Bose is like, no, don't do that. But it's just
really
pure.
Stands out in that game. It really stands out that it's significantly good and funny.
It's so lively and beautiful and wonderful, and it's like it's a couple of actors and a day's pay to just give you solid gold, and it's like it's joyful.
I'm sure you guys saw like a lot of those clips went viral because people are like, wait, what? I'm gonna hang out by this construction site. Yeah. People are talking about, and not to bring it back to the bummer of the strike, but I will. Those jobs would get wiped out.
Yeah.
They just would. And a lot of those jobs, by the way, are like what up-and-coming voice actors do. Those are what you cut your teeth on before you get to move up to doing, principal characters. So not only are they wonderful in their own right and became viral from that game, but also that's the way that actors learn how to be actors in the booth, in lots of ways, or voice actors in particular.
Certainly majority of a cast. I mean, you have a very small principal cast, that's doing performance capture or that's just, covers the main characters. And the majority of a cast, when you go to look at IMDb, these are, just this grab bag of additional voices. And you can treat those as afterthoughts, or you can treat them with discovery and joy just like anything else. And the results are something that everyone responds to. Yeah.
Also, frankly, from a player perspective, as a person who plays games, like I wanted to be in games when early in the gaming process, you could tell people didn't care about actors at the beginning. And I was like, I could do this better.
Yeah, I had that thought too. They need me.
I was like, I want to get in there. I wonder if this would work, But even as a player, it really stands out in Spider-Man 2. It's so fun. I was playing a lot more of those side missions just because it was funny. Than I ever would have. And the idea of taking that from me as a player, I'm like, well, that pisses me off now. Not just as it's not like just as an actor, it's as a player. I'm like, don't make games less fun. That sucks.
Actually, I feel like we just said that, they need me. But the same, the idea that it's new or that games don't work, that aren't compatible with collaboration, or that actors aren't important is not true, because in that same timeline, we had LucasArts adventure games with incredible performances. The BioWare performances early. I mean, I did grow up loving this work and wanting to do this because of brilliant artists in early middle school, like Mark Hamill in Full Throttle, Dominic Armato as Guybrush Threepwood. These were so exciting to me, taught me what voiceover even was, and how knowing Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker and then as this pulpy Tim Curry-esque villain in Full Throttle blew my tiny brain fully apart.
When they were great, they really stood out.
Right, they're great, and they
really stood out.
And there were people who understood that process and carried it over from other disciplines from day one. So the idea that it's like, oh, we're late and we don't know what this is and you don't matter is also a lie. So don't let them kind of make that claim. There are folks who understand and appreciate this, and those are the folks we're speaking to. We're saying the rest of work from here on out is with people who respect us and understand this process and are willing to give us a modicum, a baseline of respect.
Thank you all so much for joining us and for your support. We love you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Y'all are amazing.